Thank you guys for the well wishes, and I am feeling much better. So I really appreciate all your guys, goodwill towards me. Today we're going to be doing some market analysis, some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, and Nvidia. And I want you to stick around for the VIX because that's going to be very important, and we touch on that towards the end of the video. Now, I think the biggest thing we need to note here on the SPY for this Sunday video for the week ahead, okay, something we really need to note here is we are closing below that 200-day moving average. You can see over here, we actually had some wicks and held up above it, but now we are actually breaking that, which signals to me, at least in the immediate future, that we could see a little bit more downside. Now, we are oversold on shorter time frames, and we'll look at those here in a second, so we could see some kind of pop. For right now, overall, we are seeing, these moving averages start to get closed below, and it looks like we do want to test the actual bottom of our Bollinger Bands here. So I think we do have potential, early on in the week to come down into these levels. Now, if we do see some kind of pop, then I do expect that we will still see the actual bottom of this Bollinger Band getting tested at some point. The thing we can look forward to on the daily chart here is those divergences that we've been talking about. If we do come into lower levels, or even if we reverse from right here, you will technically have a small divergence right there, okay? What I would like to see as a trader is for that to come down into lower levels and see some good news with some kind of reaction of buyers, giving us that divergence on every single indicator and in the price action here. As you can see on the 30-minute here on the SPY, we actually are very oversold. So if you look down here at this RSI, I know it's kind of small on your screen, but you can see we've been in oversold territory pretty much all day on Friday. We were at those oversold conditions, so we could see some kind of pop. But right now you are getting a continuation, right? We saw this big selling happen, and then we got a little bit of a bounce, and now we're going to see it most likely continue. It does have some momentum behind it, but if we do see that reaction pretty quickly and buy back up, we actually could see a little tiny 30-minute divergence form. So we can look for that on Monday, but if we do get some kind of pop on Monday, because the VIX was up by 10% on Thursday, the day that I was sick, but by now, if you've been watching this channel and you're subscribed, that there's an 85% chance of an update that the VIX is predicting when it's up by 10% one day. So Friday, we had that 85% chance. It didn't happen. That means Monday, we have an 85% chance to see some kind of update. Now, a lot of the time when I do talk about that, that doesn't mean like a reversal, right? A lot of the time it can just mean like, hey, we maybe dip to further lower levels and then buy back up and get a green bar. I think that would be actually a good sign for the market. But we could see some kind of, dip down, buying back up, and dip back down and give us some kind of green indecision bar. So I don't want you to think that because there's an 85% chance of an update that this has to recover from here. Right now, it looks like that momentum is pretty strong to the downside, and maybe we do see a touch down into this area around that 418. As you can see, I do have my purple lines here now on the 30-minute. I just put them on there, okay? So we could see a big moves this week. We could see very like a lot of volatility because you see how big this range is for the week, okay? So we could see some kind of reactive move all the way down with that previous selling, maybe even cut below that and come into the monthly, which is the yellow lines that we have here. And these are just what the options have priced in for the month, and then these purple ones are what we have priced in for the week. So that just means if we do get out of this early on in the week, we could see at some point price come back in between these lines by Friday, okay, by the close on Friday. So we will be paying attention to these, but right now, even though it does look like the direction is down, we could see some kind of reaction here and then get up to those levels. We overall just need to see what happens on Monday, and so I am going to be talking more about these risk ranges on Monday. Now, the cues here, we've been paying attention to this kind of wedging that's been going on, right? We've been wedging up on the daily time frame, possibly just a continuation structure, right? So there is that possibility of that, bull run into the end of the year if we get some good news, maybe the Fed pausing or something like that. So, but right now we are seeing that red bar pop up on the MACD, meaning we are most likely going to test the bottom Bollinger here. We might even cut below that, right? I was talking about a scenario on my Friday video or Saturday morning that we could see a touch outside of this weekly range and then buy back up. So that's overall what we're looking for. If we start to continue to close below the 200-day moving average on the SPY, that is going to be a very bearish signal, okay? So we want to see some kind of reaction from these types of areas in order to see that good news come to fruition, and then we could get some kind of bull run. Right now, I think what we're going to be paying attention to are these weekly ranges because the VIX is above 20, so we are going to see bigger swings. So we could see this swing all the way up and then come back in. We could see it swing all the way down and come back in by the end of the week. So I would just say we want to be paying attention to what is happening on Monday, and then we'll talk more about these risk ranges. But as far as the 30-minute goes, you can see it's kind of like the SPY here. It even got even more oversold down here on the RSI. Okay, so the RSI, we are pretty oversold on the 30-minute chart. So that could mean that we go up and see some kind of bounce with possibly this double bottom. Maybe that gives us, if you kind of measure this out, I'm sure it kind of looks like, you know, we might even be going to do some kind of retest, right? See how it's adding up to here. Maybe we do just get some kind of retest. Right now, what I'm paying attention to is it looks like we're completing some kind of cup. So to the bear side, we are completing some kind of cup here, and we create some kind of, you know, handle at this point. We could see that start to break down and head to lower levels. But as of right now, to the bear side, I am seeing how price reacts, you know, around 2 levels. That would be somewhere around this wedging here or somewhere around that weekly expected move priced in from the options. That's what I'm going to pay attention to. And then to the bull side, if we do see some kind of reaction, you know, very bullish reaction higher, maybe a full recovery up into these levels, this is what I'm going to be paying attention to. I'm going to pay attention to the retest here, and I'm going to pay attention to the weekly expected move. That's what I'm looking at to the bull side. Now, I was sick for Thursday's video, but on Apple, you know, overall what I said on Wednesday was I am looking for a red closing bar in this purple zone to kind of tell me that we want to head to lower levels. And when that does happen, I expect we will go test the bottom of this purple zone, because it was very important around this level. If you were paying attention way back then, you were subscribed, which thank you for being subscribed, because that was some good info around here. We weren't able to break below this zone. So if we are able to break below this zone and get that red closing bar, we could see some further selling into our wedge that's formed here. And we don't necessarily have to be, you know, super bearish at that point. We want to pay attention to, you know, if we'd get some kind of buying back in at that point, because what that would set up for us is some kind of triple divergence, right? We would see the triple divergence here. We would see the triple divergence along here. Now, we could see that little bounce on Monday, but one of the rules on this channel is we do not buy calls on a stock if we see a red bar on a daily chart, no matter what the 30-minute or anything like that looks like. Because if you do, I mean, unless you're a day trader and you're pretty seasoned at it, you can do it. But if you're looking for, you know, week or 2-week plays, you don't want to be taking calls in this area. Even if it does start to bounce up from this level, overall, this will hurt you buying calls in this area more than it'll help you, right? So we want to help you out. So this just means the momentum on a daily chart is there. You're below the center line, right? So you're in negative territory. I think that what I told you when this Wednesday or Thursday bar happened, sorry, I was sick to give you that, but we did get a red bar closing below all these moving averages, closing inside this purple zone, which just told me at that point that we most likely will go test the bottom of this purple zone for now. And we just want to see what happens after that. If we get some kind of, you know, bar out of it to test the 200, and then we see buying back up and we end up in that zone kind of like we did over here, then we could see that upward move again. But if we do see further breakdowns, then we could see the bottom of our wedge getting tested. I think the reason that, you know, I wouldn't necessarily bank on Monday being a green day is just because you're very worried at this point that this type of selling continuation can happen, right? We got this little bounce, and who's to say this isn't just an ABC, right? And we can kind of measure that out for a sec. I know it's a little curvy and stuff, but we can see where would that kind of line us up to on Monday. That actually might take us directly into that 200-day moving average. So I wouldn't, oh, I burped, sorry. I wouldn't necessarily be you know, taking out calls at this point or shorts, because you kind of miss the big move at this point. But what you want to see is some kind of basing out, right? With some kind of basing out, or even getting some kind of buyback into this zone, test the bottom one more time and start to head upwards. So right now, I would just say that this purple zone is very important, whether we are closing outside of it or, you know, buying back into it. I think that's very important going into Monday. Tesla, we did break out of that huge triangle we've been in ever since the all-time high, but as you can see, we are way out of that those Bollinger Bands. So we could see some kind of reaction. We are right on or even closing below that 200, which isn't the best signal. But you notice my line in the sand kind of this 207.42, where I was expecting some buyers to pop back in, is kind of in confluence with these little bundles in here of buyers. So we could see some buying start to happen pretty quickly on in the week. And we do have a lot of earnings that can make these stocks start to react upward. And then if we do get that Fed rate decision at the end of this month, that they are possibly going to pause over the next like month or 2 months, or they just say they are going to maybe raise one more time or pause one more time, something like that. Any kind of pausing will be seen as good news for the market. And at this point, I think we could see some kind of reaction from this level on Tesla. Another reason that I really like this level of 207.42 on Tesla is just because look at the weekly, it's coming outside of that risk range. This is a very, very bearish bar on the weekly, right? We're seeing that cross down pretty firmly on the MACD here. We could see further selling, but you notice what's right there, the 200 and the 50 on the weekly time frame. So we definitely most likely will see some kind of buying at that point. And we hope at that point that we do get some kind of good news throughout the week and can see a good reaction in Tesla. And maybe this was just some kind of, fake out with the earnings. So on Tesla, you're kind of at a point of, is it going to hold up above that, or are we going to see it dramatically sell off? If you do close below the 50 and the 200 on a weekly time frame at the end of this week, it is going to be a very, very bearish signal. Okay, I want to point that out before we touch on Amazon here. Amazon, we've been paying attention to this wedging, right? We looked at this as a wedge, and we said that at this point we are getting that sell signal, and we haven't even crossed over on the MACD. It just tells us that we could see some kind of expansion move, maybe even coming down into the bottom here where our monthly risk range is for Amazon. Okay, these yellow lines, and then we have to see if Amazon is able to report some good earnings. If Amazon's able to report some good earnings, that'll be a good sign for the market, and maybe we can see that start to creep up. Okay, if Amazon reports good earnings, that means the consumer is still buying stuff, on Amazon. So Amazon could be a good indication of how the consumer is right now. And if the consumer is still spending, that means the economy can still grow, and that we're probably going to see more strength in the consumer throughout the rest of the year into the Christmas season. We just want to be paying attention to this low right here. If that does start to get cut, I do believe we will go test that 200, and that 200 sits where? It sits right at where that wedge lines up. It sits right at where that monthly expected move is. So we could see a very good reaction from that level that would cause us to curl over on the MACD and even give us a divergence, right? Divergence on the daily chart that we're seeing on a lot of charts. So don't think that there has to be a crash right now. There very well can be, but we are seeing some things set up on the technical side that could lead to some kind of bounce. And we just need some kind of fundamental thing to make that a bigger bounce and give us some kind of bull run. Because if you do see these divergences line up and they do get some kind of pop and there's no good news, you could just be touching, somewhere up in here or going to fill a gap, and then you see it come down again. So we really want some very good news for the market to come out this week in order to, if these daily divergences start to set up, we want that good news so that we can actually see a good bull run into the end of the year. All right, now NVIDIA, you're probably hearing every single person on the internet talk about a head and shoulders, correct? And we've been talking about that too on this channel, but we noticed that something fishy looks like it could be happening here. We told you once, this red bar came, we could get that reaction to get some kind of retest. That happened, but now we did close below those moving averages. Once we closed below those moving averages come Tuesday, we were like, okay, this is going to test that neckline. And the good part about this testing that neckline is that we'll see what's going to happen most likely with the market. So if this starts to break down and we buy back into it, well, guess what? You just took out all the stops at this level, and now you actually have some kind of divergence, right? You'll have some kind of divergence playing out on NVIDIA, and we can see that upside. I do believe we are going to test down in these levels, but we could see this play out in a few ways, right? We could see a reaction upward and then come test and then go. There's a lot that can happen. The market doesn't go down in a straight line or up in a straight line. But the bullish case here would be that we get some kind of reaction around this level. If we don't get a reaction around that level, we can look at the 200. And in the bearish case, I guess this would be if we do break down and then we start to retest and then we start to break down to lower levels, say before, the earnings come, what is that, November 21st, then we actually could see further downside. And that's just because if we just zoom out, we've talked about this a few times, that 200 lines up with this gap, right? So there's no price action to hold you up here. People from here can sell their positions and it will drop this thing like a rock down into possibly this gap fill. That's mainly where I'm going to be paying attention to the price of NVIDIA and that is if we get that further downside. So if we do come down, get a retest and see a break of this low, I am going to expect us to come down to this about, what is that? That's about 305.73. On the bull side, I am looking for that reaction. Okay, so if we do get that reaction up and we see that divergence start to play out, we can see further upside in Nvidia, but we want to make sure that we do get that good news, because if you do break this level and say we just get that reaction because there is divergence and we pop up one more time, and say we do not get any kind of pause or earnings are bad in a bunch of companies, we could see this start to break down very quickly. And the reason that I just wanted to draw this out is because you can see how we had this little lip over here, and then we created the left shoulder, then we create the head, then we create the right shoulder. Who's to say that we don't create a right lip on the end here and then start to fall back down? That's what I'm paying attention to as a whole on Nvidia. Okay, now thank you for making it this far, because, the VIX is very important to pay attention to. I like to say on this channel that it's good to pay attention to the stock that you're, trying to get info on, but if you're not paying attention to the VIX at the same time, you can be caught off guard. So what you're getting here is kind of a hanging man candle, right? So we are seeing some divergences here, right? This flatness here, we actually have divergence, like clear divergence on the RSI, but you're kind of flat on the MACD. So we could see some kind of rebound. Now, does that mean that we have to just start to, collapse from here on the VIX? No, it could mean that we get that green day, then we get one more red day, then we start to see a drop. So we just want to be paying attention to that. But overall, right now, I want you to make sure to understand that we do have a VIX that is above the 200. It is above the 50. And those are the two scenarios that I said this is what we need in order to see further selling. And now, in order to get that crash scenario to play out, we want to see this 200 start to kind of flatten out, even start to steer upward, and then we can see this 50 actually cross that 200. If that happens, that is going to signal that we might, the probabilities are actually to us heading to lower levels. Okay, so I want you to pay attention to that. You can see on the 2-hour, we could see further selling. Okay, so I don't want to bank on a green day for Monday, because the VIX isn't necessarily telling me that it wants to reverse from these levels. It's just telling me, hey, we're not even overbought at this point. We could make one more move higher, possibly to reconnect with these highs, right? And then maybe we do get some kind of good news, some kind of reaction to the downside in the VIX, which would give us that big pop in the market. So pay attention to the VIX. If we start to close below the 200 and the 50 again, then it is a very good signal that we are going to see some kind of bull run into the end of the year. I know it's a lot to pay attention to throughout the week, but these yields are very important, okay? We were seeing these yields start to move higher, and even on this big bar here where we were going to test those highs, right? We actually weren't seeing major selling in the market, and that's why I was kind of hinting that, we could see much further selling, because we didn't necessarily react how the market should when this 10-year yield is starting to grow so quickly, right? So we did see this big extension that actually caused the market to sell off by the end of the week. But now you can see on Friday, we actually did start to see that come off while the market headed to lower levels. So at this point, what we want to pay attention to is if this continues to fall to lower levels, I do believe the market will still see that as good news, and we could see that big pop in the market. Now, the only problem with these things starting to happen is we're seeing the 10-year and the 2-year get very close together, right? 2 years at 5.077. 10-year now is at 4.918. Those are very, very close. And when those uninvert, that historically has proven to be that we are going to see recession within the next 6 to 18 months. So we could see, those recession scares maybe come in initially, but then people see that dropping off and they see it as good news. I just want to pay attention to price action in those weekly ranges for this week, but this 10-year, if we do start to see those, uninvert, we could see a pop in the market. But if we do see that bull run into the end of the year and these do uninvert, historically, that means that there will be more pain down the line. So I'm expecting maybe either early 2024 or possibly, like September, October of 2024, we actually could see an actual crash happen if we actually do see this uninversion take place and we get that bull run. Overall, what I'm just saying is, because I'm a TLT investor, I just marked this 8250. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're reacting from that level at this point. We could see that dip down into it and then buy back up. What I'm paying attention to on TLT and why I think those yields will come down is because we're seeing this little divergence here on the MACD and the RSI start to play out. So if this RSI is able to, cross and get above 50 or it's actually starting to form, it's not necessarily playing out, but if we do see these start to curl over, then we will get that divergence to confirm, and we could see some kind of upward move, which just leads me to believe that these yields are going to come back down this week at some point. tune in for Monday's video because sometimes I do update those risk ranges. They sometimes change a little bit by Monday, but we want to be paying attention to those weekly risk ranges because we are going to see some very rapid moves, right? You saw it this week with those moves being up 1%, down 1%, up 1%, all in one day. That's what happens when the VIX starts to creep above 20. So the fact that the VIX is above 20, we are in a scenario where that crash can happen, but we also do see some setups forming that could lead to some kind of bull run into the end of the year. So we really want to pay attention to those risk ranges this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a great weekend and good luck. I wish you all the luck in the world trading this week. Okay, have a good one. Peace.